Hi, and I'm very glad to welcome you in this new video lesson. My name is Igor Smirnov, I'm International Grandmaster and Chess Coach. In this video, I'm going to show you one very interesting opening line which I have discovered recently. I already have gained a few nice victories in this variation, and I'm pretty sure that you'll be able to get similar great results after a study of this lesson. Additionally, this opening line is not commonly known, and moreover, I'm pretty sure that most chess players don't know about this opening line at all. Okay, I will not intrigue you too much, so let's get closer to the variation. Here is the line which I'm going to share with you. After knight f3 and knight c6, here white can suddenly play b4. Have you tried to play this move? Well, I guess that no is your answer. Really, many players have never seen this line here, and I know that the move b4 looks a bit crazy. It looks like a giveaway play. White is losing the pawn for nothing. But at the same time, I'm going to show you some interesting variations, and I'm sure that you will change your opinion about this line after this lesson. Okay, first of all, what is the idea behind the move b4? An idea is pretty simple. If black takes with the c-pawn, then white replies d4, creating a strong center and threatening to go d5, pushing away the black's knight. And suddenly it's not that simple for black to stop this obvious threat. Alternatively, black certainly can take onto the b4 by the knight, but in this case white will have an extra tempo for playing c3, knight c6, d4, and we got a quite a bit similar situation. White also has a strong pawn center, and white also is threatening to go d5, pushing back the black's knight. So this is the general idea and general tactical idea of this variation. By the way, I'm pretty sure that you know the Evans Gambit. After the following moves, e4, e5, and here after bishop c4, bishop c5, white can play b4. And then if black takes by the bishop, white replies c3, following by the move d4. And actually the idea is pretty much the same. White is creating the strong center and is threatening to push d5. Everybody knows Evans Gambit, and everybody knows that this idea is interesting, and it makes sense. Even Kasparov played this, many strong players played this opening line, so this is really very interesting. Taking into account this information, we must admit that the similar idea should work well in the Sicilian defense as well, and we must admit that it at least makes sense, and it is at least interesting idea. Actually, I came to this move quite suddenly. I just played blitz games and I tried to make something new for my opponent to somehow surprise him, and that is how I came to the move b4. First I thought that it's just, well, a nice way to somehow confuse him and to mix up the things. But suddenly, even for myself, I won nearly all the games in this variation, and after that I thought that probably it's not that simple as it looks at the first sight. After that I tried to make search in the database, and I found that almost nobody have played this opening line before. I found a very little quantity of games. For example, you know, if we search the move d4 here, you'll find millions of games. While as for the move b4, there were only about 100 or 200 of games, and most of them have been played by amateur players. I found only 9 games of players over 2400 of rating player who played b4 here in this position. So this line is nearly completely unknown, and it will definitely surprise your opponent. By the way, it is also pretty interesting because on the second move, I think that you know, lots of people know the move b4 here, called a win gambit, and lots of players play this. After c takes b4, they usually try to play a3, trying to play it in the style of the Benko Gambit, maybe sacrificing some pawns to open lines for your pieces. And again, it is a little bit strange that everybody knows about this move b4 on the second move, but nobody wants to try to make the same thing on the third move. Here I think that the move b4 has even greater reasons to be played, because here you also threatens to go b5, and that's why it's hard for black to ignore this move. And additionally, as I have already showed you, after c takes and d4 in all of these lines we use the exposed position of this knight onto the c6, and that's why it gives you a good threat of the move d5 pushing this knight away. So this is very good for us to wait for black to play knight c6 and only then to use this gambit and try to gain extra temples by attacking this knight. Okay, so again, let me tell you like a little conclusion about this variation. So what are the ideas behind the move b4 here in this position? The first idea is that you create a strong pawn center. Doesn't matter whether black takes by the knight or by the pawn, in both cases you can create a strong center. This was the first idea. Now the second idea is tactical. You're threatening to go d5 and push away the black's knight. And the third idea is rather strategical. You're opening lines for your pieces, and that allows you to complete your development quickly, and this gives you great chances for a future quick attack at the early stage of game, even at the opening, because probably you will be leading in development. So these are three major ideas behind the move b4. And now let's analyze more concrete variations. Okay, let's think what black can do here. Obviously white is threatening to play b5 or to take on the c5, that's why in 99% of cases black will probably take this pawn, by the knight or by the pawn, and these will be two main lines here. Nevertheless, black may try to go something else, like maybe d5 or e5, and later I'll show you those lines as well. But first of all, let's take a look at the most obvious, most natural lines where black takes onto the b4 by the pawn or by the knight. Taken by the pawn seems to be the most natural, and let's start from this variation. As you already know, white should go d4. Now white has an obvious threat of playing d5 and pushing the black's knight back on the last rank, and black must react somehow. The main move for black here is the move d5. Although it does not solve all the black's problems, because after that still white can take, and then the exposed position of the black's queen will also give white some additional temples for development. A little later in this lesson I will show you this variation as well, but first let's think what else black can do. Another idea which black may try to use, except the move d5, is the move d6. Now black is making it possible for him to go with the knight on the e5, and that was an idea of the move d6. Now of course white should take there, doubling black's pawns, and then we can go bishop b2, taking that pawn onto the e5. It's not that simple for black to protect this pawn somehow, because if black tries to do it with his queen by playing queen d6 or queen c7, white has check bishop b5, and as you can see, black either has to move his king into the center, which will give white great attacking chances in the future, or black will have to play bishop d7, but now white can take, and if black recaptures by the queen, it leaves the e5 pawn unprotected. White will take back the pawn, having a strong center, advantage in development, and an excellent position. Oh, this variation is not good for black, so let's go back. We'll see what else black can do here. Okay, after bishop b2, as we have seen already, black cannot protect the pawn onto the e5 really. He may try to counterattack with knight f6, counterattacking the pawn onto the e4. And here you've got a choice. You can simply play knight d2, protecting that pawn and saving, well, all the similar ideas here. On the next move you can go bishop b5 check, and the white's position is good. However, I recommend that you use another line. I recommend that you take on the e5 here right away. You know, this is a gambit line. I mean, this whole variation with the white's move b4. And here you should try to play actively, aggressively. You should try to attack and use the open lines which you have to complete your development quickly and to start a quick attack. And that's why, from this point of view, I think that the most principled move for white is the move bishop takes e5, trying to open up the position and make your pieces as much active as it possible. Black will certainly take the pawn onto the e4, and now you can go queen d4, pushing away the black's knight, taking the pawn onto the g7, taking the pawn onto the b4, so here the move queen d4 seems really great. the black's knight has to go back. Bishop f5 for black is impossible because white also can go bishop b5 check. This is another threat which white has in all of these variations. Okay, now let's analyze what if black goes onto the f6. Right now black is taking the pawn onto the d5 and white needs to protect it. White can do it by playing c4. The move is pretty good. If black takes en passant, of course white will recapture by the knight, and this will help white to finish his development with the temples. So black will probably try to find something else. At the same time, it's not that simple for black to find a better alternative, because white is putting pressure on the black's position, and it's not so simple for black to somehow continue his development. For example, if he tries e6, white will reply d6, keeping the black's position locked and keeping all the black's pieces on the last rank. So here white is completely dominating, and this variation is probably not so good for black. So let's go back. Okay, in this position we have analyzed the black's move knight f6. Let's also take a look at the black's retreat to the d6. This move is possible, but after that white can simply take the pawn onto the b4. Now the material is equal, and white saves a slightly more active position and better chances. Black will probably go e6. White goes knight c3. All the moves are pretty logical. If black tries to somehow use the discovered attack onto the white's queen, this is completely not dangerous for white, because white can make check, white can play queen a4, queen b5 or bishop b5, and all those counter blows will only create problems for black, but not for white. That's why white shouldn't worry about the black's potential discovered attack. If black makes something else, then it's still not so simple for black to finish his development normally. His bishop on the f8 has to protect the pawn onto the g7. Also, white is putting pressure onto the d file, and white can, for example, take onto the e6 and play rook d1, making a pin on the black's knight and probably winning this knight. And as I mentioned earlier, white also has possibility of making checks with bishop b5 or queen a4. So white has quite a lot of threats, and it's not so simple for black even to find a good move here. For instance, if black tries bishop e7, then at least white can take onto the e6 and on the next move go rook d1, pinning the knight, and I can't see a real way for black to save this knight somehow. That's why in this variation white has great attacking chances, and this leads to the conclusion that this whole idea of playing d6 for black is not good for him.